Hi there, Dr. Angus Pike here, President of the Victorian branch of the Chiropractors Association, and just wanting to give our members a quick update on the expiring change Mark II. The room that we have is filling very, very quickly, so if you're interested in coming along, then I would suggest that you register for that very quickly. Our early bird does finish on March the 11th, but as I said, the room that we've been able to get is not actually a huge room for this, and so whilst there are a few places left, I don't expect there will be spots available for long from there as well. So the excitement so far has been fantastic. The list that we have is absolutely first class. I've got a great interview coming now with Michelle McQuaid. If you missed the interview with Rosemary Keating, she starts to talk a little bit about communication and how important that is in all numbers of our practice, regardless of how it is that we want to practice, then by all means contact the CAA and we can send that interview as well. So hold on now. Michelle McQuaid's interview is just fantastic. She's really going to be talking to us a lot about happiness, about resilience, about living in our strengths and how that'll make a difference to how we're able to serve our community. So listen on, enjoy, listen all the way through because she talks about some homework, some steps to begin with, even before coming along to the seminar. So hope you enjoy. Look forward to seeing you April 2nd at our Inspiring Change Mark II. Thank you. Well, I'd like to welcome our listeners. You're here with Dr. Angus Pike, the current president of the Victorian branch of the Chiropractors Association. And I have the pleasure of being with one of my most favourite people at this moment. It's Michelle McQuaid. So good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Angus.
Michelle has been a client at our centre for some years now when she kind of gallops all around the world. And I often, when I talk about Michelle to other people, as I often do, I think she's one of the most congruent people that I've ever met in terms of somebody who walks her talk just as much, if not more, than anybody who I've ever really met with. So she's a pleasure to deal with. She is one of the speakers who's going to be coming along to our Inspiring Change seminar, which is on the April 2nd, and I'm incredibly excited to be able to be listening for a couple of hours, but we're going to give you kind of a little bit of a soundbite of some of the wonderful things that you can expect to hear from Michelle. So, Michelle, do you want to give a bit of your kind of background of what kind of brought you to sort of now and your experiences, work and stuff like that as well, and then perhaps what we're going to talk about?
Sure, Angus, thanks. I guess I grew up through communications, branding, marketing originally, and as I did a lot of that work, it struck me how often we didn't understand how to help people change. So particularly with a brand, in services companies, which is where I was working, it's all about living the brand, bringing that experience to life. And we were working through change programs with burning platforms and coalitions of the willing, and not much was changing. So I started to look for what else we understood about human behaviour that would lead to change. And that led me to the work of a group of scientists in a field called positive psychology, which was founded a little over 10 years ago by a guy called Martin Seligman, and looks at how do you bring out the best in people. So I was lucky enough a few years ago to go and study with Marty at the University of Pennsylvania, where I did my Masters in Applied Positive Psychology, and also lucky enough to work for PwC a couple of days a week here in Melbourne, who let me experimented with it on their staff, which we've done for the past few years with great results. And really, my days now are filled between PwC. I also work with teenagers out of the non-profit organisation Reach, and with my own growing kids who are 8 months and 5, around how do you live more of the life that you want? And what does positive psychology, neuroscience, behavioural economics have to offer us as fields of science in terms of insights that would help us do that?
Michelle's always been a great source of my kind of reading literature. She comes in and tells me, you've got to read this and read that too. And I think as a chiropractic profession, the one thing that we want for our clients is for them to be able to live a more extraordinary life. And having people change, I've come to the realisation in the last 5 years, it's not more information that people need. It's strategies for behavioural change and stuff like that. And particularly, the wonderful thing about, particularly the positive psych side of things is it has a philosophy that's so aligned with what chiropractors are used to as well. So in particular during the day, what I'm excited about you spending some time with us about is that this is really going to be some nurturing for the chiropractors. So rather than us talking about how we can deal with our clients, and what I've kind of asked you to talk about is how can we as chiropractors be better people? How can we be living more in joy? And of course, that's really what's going to flow onto our clients as well. So can you chat a bit about that as well?
Sure, Angus. I think one of the most basic findings of positive psychology to date has been the power of working to our strengths. And it sounds so simple, and yet most of us spend huge parts of our days not engaged in the things that we're best at, and not engaged in the things that bring us most joy and energy, and not engaged in the things that renew us. And I think particularly in a caring profession like chiropractic, where you're helping people be well all day, without that sense of renewal for yourself, those days can become very, very long.
Yeah.
So Gallup Gallup organisation did some research a few years ago about 200,000 organisations, all different sizes, from small businesses to large, all different fields, from health fields to professional services. And what they found is that on average, most people don't get to use their strengths each day. So when they asked organisations and the people in them these questions, only 2 out of every 10 people felt like at least once a day, even for just 5 or 10 minutes, they got to use their strengths, what they were best at.
There's the typical conversation in the world nowadays really is, where am I not performing well, and then what do I have to do to improve that? Whereas the research and particularly conversations you and I have had said that might not actually be the best way to get the results that we really want, yeah?
Absolutely. I think as human beings, evolution fine-tuned us to be such good fault-finding machines. What's wrong? What's not working? How do I fix it? And I think it's a very Western culture piece as well, how do I improve my weaknesses? And yet, neurologically, it makes very little sense to try and work from that way. So in our brains and the way we're wired, and chiropractors understand this better than most people I meet, is that, of course, the neural pathways we have for a weakness are much smaller. They're not as strong, they're not as well built, and that's why things are a weakness for us. Whereas the pathways we have around our strengths are those strong functioning neural pathways. It's the neurons that fire together, wire together theory.
Yeah.
So then when we start working from our strengths, the improvements we can make, the gains that we can get, move that much faster for us because our brains are already wired to work that way. Whereas when we try to address a weakness, we don't have that same neural power. It's generally less enjoyable and harder for us because we're not wired that way.
So how do you go about finding what your strengths are? How do you identify those?
And it's really interesting, when positive psychology started as a field, there actually wasn't much of a vocabulary around strengths. Lots of words for all the things we do wrong, lots of words for our weaknesses. But when you looked across time for common vocabularies of strengths, it was something sadly lacking, not just in our cultures, but cultures around the world. So one of the first things Martin Seligman set about doing was working with a group of psychologists, social researchers and others to try and work out what were a set of universal strengths that captured the human condition. And so they did a long piece of research right around the world, looking back through the philosophers, looking through religion, looking through modern culture such as Harry Potter, to try and find what were the universal strengths that humans shared, and in particular what was teachable and buildable about those strengths. So they came up with what they call the values in action, or VIA classification. And in contrast to the old psychology diagnostic statistics manual, or the DSM, Bible of everything that goes wrong with us, they're proposing that this VIA classification is everything that goes right with us. And in particular, it looks at character strengths.
Yeah. So, I mean, they asked a different question to begin with, which was, so as opposed to, analysing, what makes people head down the path of depression and stuff like that, they really looked at, when people are living a life of joy and when they have a great deal of resilience, when they're happy, what are they doing and stuff from there too. So, because one of the things that you're going to spend some time talking about, actually, before we get into this, share this with me because we're talking about before. When somebody lives their strengths, what happens?
So again, really interesting body of research growing all around the world on this at the moment. People who are more frequently in their strengths, no surprises, happier, healthier, more resilient, more successful at an individual basis. And organisations who let people use their strengths in the workplace have lower turnover of staff, better levels of productivity and better levels of client satisfaction.
Yeah. So just little things, not
Yeah,
much you
the
can
things we
expect.
don't really chase after.
Yeah. What I like about lots of this work too, and having been somebody, I'm a bit of a sucker for the self-help world, but it really brings, research towards that self-help and says, what's the outcome that we really want to have is, on days when I'm in, weeks when I'm in the office, and months when I'm in the office, when I'm in my joy, then, I get better results with my clients. I have more people want to come and see me, and everything just kind of tends to hum along, better from there too. Now, you've got some suggested...
If I can just touch on that, it's because it's contagious.
Yes.
So, I mean, the other great piece of some of the recent positive psychology research is the contagious nature of happiness, and actually more so than the contagious nature of depression. So when you feel happy, everybody else coming into your energy and your environment takes a little piece of that with them.
Yeah, nice. Great. So you've got some homework that you want to, it's not, none of the negative connotations, some really fun preparation to do before our members come and spend some time with us. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I highly recommend that people go have a visit at the VIA website. This is the classification system that Seligman and his peers created. You'll find it at www.via character, all one word, .org. Or you can just Google VIA character survey and you'll find it in those results. It takes about 20 minutes. It's an online survey that you can complete. It's completely free of charge. So I highly recommend you spend the 20 minutes and do it. At the end of it, what it'll do is give you a listing from your highest strengths to your lesser strengths, not your weaknesses, of those 24 different character classifications and a bit of information about them. And if you can bring that to the session, I think you'll find it a lot more meaningful. If you don't get a chance, we'll have a pencil and paper way of doing it on the day, but I think you'll feel that it's more rigorous and a better picture of you if you get a chance to complete that survey online.
I think that'll just begin the mindfulness process of people starting to think about that too. And then really what we're going to spend some time, diving with you on the day is how do we go about integrating these into our life, at
Absolutely.
home, at work, all our relationships and stuff like that as well. So...
I think, if you want to thrive at work, what better place to start than what you're best at. And so generally people are pretty curious to find out what that is. So my recommendation is it's 20 minutes online well spent.
Great. And so much, my excitement around this session and this day, which I say again, not by design, but we've got 3 really extraordinary women who are presenting that day, and it's great. And so much of this session is really about learning how we can be more nurtured as chiropractors, and as you said, so we can be contagious to the people in and around us from there too. So I've done the VIA Strength stuff. It was actually really neat, 20 minutes just to sit there and answer the questions and stuff too, and the report came back. There is, just to give you a heads up too, there's actually a paid report that you can get there as well, and your suggestion at this stage is, Michelle, is to actually not get the paid report at this stage?
Yeah, if you really, if you do the survey and you just want more and you can't wait for the session, there's absolutely no problems. I think it's about $40 for the paid report. And what it does is gives you some information about how you compare to the rest of the population that you match with. And it gives you a bit more background on the strengths that you're showing up highest for. But you don't need the paid report for the session, and we can have a lot of that dialogue there. But it's no problems doing it. It's just an unnecessary cost if you don't want to go that far at the moment.
Great. Well, on our membership, in advance, thank you, Michelle. If you if you wanted to spend some time with Michelle for a corporate world, it would cost you a fortune because she really is a leader in her field, and so we have her there. For the afternoon, I'm sure that we can mob her all afterwards for questions. I'm absolutely certain that you will want to as well. So the date is April 2nd. Venue is still being finalised. It looks like it will probably be the RACV club in at the city from there too. But to register for this, you can give the CAA Vic a call. So that's 9328 4699. So that's 9328 4699. So Michelle, I want to appreciate and thank you very much for your time now, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Great, and can't wait. Thanks, Angus.
Thanks, Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.